Welcome back, everybody, to Energy First with Sarah and Jen. I feel like I haven't been here for absolutely forever. It's been a few weeks, right? Yes. Yeah, glad to be back. So just wanted to discuss why we started this podcast. We cover everything that has to do with the operations of the oil field, so what it is that we actually physically do out there, kind of doing an unveiling so that people that are not in the industry can understand. We do cover legislature, so anything that either currently affects our industry that's legislatively or is being proposed. And on that, I do have kind of exciting news. I actually got nominated to be the energy advisor on the National Farm Bureau. So, yes.
That's cool.
Congrats.
Thanks.
That's super cool.
So I'll be going down at least twice a year to DC and just basically advising them on legislation in regards to our industry. A lot of people don't realize that for every 200 Farm Bureau members you have in any county, we actually get a seat at state. And those seats are the individuals that actually propose the laws that go to our senators that then go and get proposed on the floor for our industry. So it is a pretty big deal. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah, so bringing agriculture and energy together, which is something that we've discussed before here on this podcast. So I'm excited about that. And then the last and most important thing that we like to cover on this podcast is, of course, the people of the industry, because without them, we wouldn't be the industry that we are. So I think we've kind of come to the end of our original sponsors for the show. So just putting it out there that we are accepting new sponsors for our efforts. This definitely doesn't happen for free. And I know a lot of you, we've had great feedback about the podcast. So if anybody would, consider sponsoring, please, by all means, get in touch with Sarah, myself, or Miss Amy here at Mink, our wonderful producer. And so I think that's everything we've got to say about that. Big events coming up soon. What do we have? Oh, we have the AED golf tournament.
Right.
That's
September
coming up
14th.
soon. Sabrina, I know there's a waiting list for teams. I think I keep getting phone calls about that. So, that's definitely coming up. And then we have Shale Insight, too.
Oh, that's the last week of September.
Correct. Yep. So I think Sarah and I will both be there. I will be there with Keystone. Sarah's going to be there with Tally and Women's Energy Network. So we have those events coming up. But most importantly, we're going to move on to our very special guest who is here under duress because we've been asking him for 17,000 months since we started the podcast. Ryan Healy, my eye is on you. You are next. So I'm going to keep saying that every episode until you agree to come on. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me for saying that, but sorry. Love you. Mean it. So without further ado, we want to welcome Kevin Rothenbuhler to the show. And Sarah, I don't know if you want to take it from here.
Oh, man, I have a story that I have to tell, and I'm really embarrassed about it, but I have to tell it because it's so funny.
Right off from the
yes,
get-go.
I do. Okay, so Kevin made an impression on me whenever I first met him. I was meeting him and all the Utica guys, and we had one of the most fun lunches ever. And he taught me something that I'm never going to forget. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
So chickens, Catlin Ball, you're going to love this. Chickens only have one hole. I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. Kevin taught me that.
And this is why I've been nominated to the Farm Bureau as the energy advisor and not Sarah Phillips, right?
That's right.
But anyway, Kevin is the VP for Utica Resources, and he's had quite an impressive trajectory of his career. So do you kind of want to go into your personal background, your family, your career?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
You appreciate the pressure?
And since Jen has been inviting me, I've been avoiding it. And but no, I was absolutely flattered whenever you guys asked me, and especially whenever you said that the people, the focus was on the people and the real people.
Yes,
was your quote. I'm not sure how many people out there want to hear my story, but if you guys want to hear it, I guess we'll go ahead and put it out there. So
we definitely want to hear it.
Thank you for the invite. So I grew up in rural Ohio, right in Monroe County, just about an hour and a half from here, and kind of kind of in the heart of the Utica Play right now. Obviously, it wasn't that whenever I was growing up, but.
What's your family background like? What did your family do before you kind of came into this?
Okay, so my mom and dad, it was a family-run trucking business. Dad had his own trucking business that he kind of grew. He drove for my granddad, and then when my granddad passed away, he kind of inherited a few trucks and has grown it since. But I've got an older brother, younger sister. Yeah.
Are either of them in oil and gas?
My sister does some legal work. She's a lawyer, and she does take on some legal work that kind of helps landowners negotiate leases and that kind of stuff. Has she
ever gone against you?
No, we've never went head to toe, head to head. But she's still right there in Monroe County in Woodsfield, and majority of our operations, URO, being we're up more towards Cambridge. Yeah. So luckily, I've not had to encounter any of that. So, but yeah, after high school, went to Marietta College. I have a petroleum engineering degree, and after that, went straight to working offshore, Baker Hughes Intech. Lafayette, Louisiana, or Broussard, technically. It's just a neighbor town from Lafayette. Worked offshore for about a year and a half till Katrina hit. Decided I'm from Ohio. I'm not really into water sports. And moved
Were you
back.
actually out on platform when that hit?
I was. So we were, I can't remember the name of the rig. If I had my tally book, I'd be able to tell you. But I remember being on the rig, and about a week prior, there was another storm that came through, and it hadn't been upgraded to hurricane, so it was still considered a tropical storm. I want to say it was like a 3, and Katrina was a 4. And I remember we tripped up into the casing, hung everything off, hung all the tools off in north of the shoe, the casing shoe, and Geraldo Rivera. I don't know why I remember this. So weird. He was a news anchor, and he came on the TV, and we were all sitting in the TV room because we're not doing anything. The rig was completely shut down. They had even closed the steel window shutters on the rig, and I remember him distinctly saying, for everybody that has family members in the Gulf, don't worry. We've been assured that all the rigs have been evacuated.
That's how
you're watching it on the TV?
No, this isn't Katrina. This is the storm before.
Oh my gosh!
This is like the week before, and he said that, and all the guys on like the rig crews immediately turned to look at the company representative, and he was like, and he panicked, right? And he's like, I promise you, like, we've not evacuated any rigs, like whatever production company we were working for. He was like, look, that's not what's happening here. I don't know why he said that, of course. And like, boy, everybody started flipping out.
You know, I never thought about what actually happens on platform. I mean, does everybody usually get evacuated? If it gets like, what does it have to be for you guys to get evacuated?
Well, that's just every company has their own protocol, right? And
never thought about that. Like, what happens to those guys when they're out there?
So, and we were with a service company, so we obviously are whatever the production company's protocol is. You know, that's their call.
So were you out there for that whole storm?
So we were there. So I was on that rig for that storm, which passed through in 6-8 hours.
Okay.
And we had some very, very hard rain, a little bit of wind, but we were indoors, obviously. They went right back to work. Katrina started coming in on like they started monitoring Katrina like on a Saturday sometime. They decided to evacuate the rig. We did the same thing, tripped up into the shoe, hung off. Since I was part of service personnel, we were considered non-essential. So like Thursday morning, they ran us on the boat. I drove back to Lafayette. And
did anybody stay on during that storm?
No, they did evacuate for Katrina.
Okay. They ran you out on the boat?
Or ran me back in.
That's what I meant. Don't you normally travel out in the helicopter?
Not always.
Really?
So every offshore rig usually has a a work boat, and a crew boat. And usually they have a crew boat that's designated for that rig. Each rig has a crew boat, which is a shorter ship, usually carries between 40 and 50 people, 100 people, or 40, 50, 60 people. And they can usually haul like 30 foot. 30 foot's about max join a pipe. So like most of my tools working for Baker, the directional tools could be hauled on that crew boat. But then each production company would have a crew boat, or a work boat. So they would have, like, let's say a production company has 5 or 6 different rigs. They would have a work boat that would have chemicals, mud, if somebody needed an extra shaker or a shaker needed to be replaced, or like the bigger items.
Yeah.
And then that work boat would go out and it would go from rig to rig to rig, and it would take days. That work boat would be out on the water for days before it would come back to a dock, as to where the crew boat would, they would make one trip, one way from the dock is like 3.5, 4 hours.
Yeah.
And being with the service company, I couldn't do anything without my tools. Tools are going by boat.
Yeah.
So the service guys usually travel by boat.
Did they have a hot shot boat?
Well, that was kind of the crew boat.
Okay.
So
if you have an emergency and you're missing an O-ring or something, you can't just.
The crew boat would bring it.
Oh, and you'd have to wait.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So it was, but they would usually carry, anything.
So I wonder if those company men still shout at you to make the boat go faster. Just wondering, like, make it go faster, Like, dude, I can't.
I am sure there were some phone calls. I'm positive of that. So and I've seen some crazy stuff like shipped back and forth.
I'm sure.
I tell this story sometimes. I took 2 or 3 bags of sunflower seeds offshore with me, and one were like. They were just when the flavored sunflower seeds were coming out, and I had a bag of jalapeno flavored ones. And the company man came into my shack, and he asked me if he could have a handful, and I said, yeah, sure. I said, just go ahead and take the whole bag. I got 2 or 3 more with me, and he goes, he said, I'll have them replaced. I said, okay. And
you probably didn't even think anything about it, though. Like, it's kind of
no, right? Like, just take it, whatever. No big deal. So the next night I came to work, and like in our shack, I had a whole case of the same flavored sunflower seeds, and every one of them had Tiger Tank sticker on them. So that was the replacement. I got a whole case for a bag that I gave him. So, but yeah, a lot of guys are pretty good guys offshore.
He must have liked you.
It was always a mixed bag, right? Just about like now. Like some people like me, some people don't.
Not everybody is.
Everybody likes you. So you were out there for what, a year and a half?
Yeah, so I worked offshore about a year and a half. Or
okay.
So. Now, I wasn't offshore strictly. I mean,
sure.
So out of the Broussard office, they covered Texas, Louisiana jobs. I was on a couple jobs in Mississippi, anything in the Gulf Coast region, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can you tell the audience about the helicopter training?
Oh, yeah, sure. So to go offshore, you have to have helicopter safety training. And there's really only 2 requirements that I really, truly remember from, and what this is it's water training. It's, I don't know what it's technically called. I think it's helicopter water safety. But anyways, they put you in a pool. They have a metal frame built out to it's supposed to simulate the cabin of a helicopter. And they would have 3 seats on one side and 3 seats mounted on the other. And you would get up in the seats, strap in with a seat belt, just like the helicopters had in them,
mm-hmm.
and they would dunk you over backwards into the pool. And to each side of you, there was a metal square on this metal framing. You would get dunked into the center, and once they tapped you on the shoulder, you'd have to undo your seat belt and then swim out of one of those.
You'd be completely submerged.
Oh yeah. We were in 8 feet of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this maybe not quite that deep, maybe 6 feet, and you'd be sitting on this chair, and they would just dunk the whole line of you.
This sounds like a Kennywood ride.
Kind of, right? Yeah, you just got to avoid that jackrabbit, man. Yeah. That is so scary. That wooden roller coaster. So they would tap you. So after they dunked you backwards, they would tap you on the shoulder. You'd have to undo your seatbelt and then swim out from the from the cabin of the helicopter.
Is this to simulate if it were to crash into the ocean then?
That's true. Yeah.
Would you have to bust out the window? I mean, someone must have lied to me. They told me they took a real helicopter, they spun it upside down. You'd have your full FRs on, wearing your metatarsals. Some people couldn't bust through the windows. You had to hold your breath for 2 minutes.
Who the heck is this?
I don't know, but this is the whole reason why I never worked offshore.
This seems very dangerous.
No
Correct.
way.
Yes.
They had scuba divers on the side that would rescue people.
You fell for this?
I've heard it from multiple different sources.
Maybe I got the discount course. I don't know.
You got the Walmart version,
Right. So, and then the other requirement was you had to swim the length of the pool without touching the bottom. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
How long would you have to hold your breath?
What do you mean?
But you can just
when they
swim.
did
You could just swim.
Well, you were dunked. No, not for the second requirement.
So to go, so once you came through the square, which represented the opening of the helicopter, they taught you to roll over on, swim, with your back down, and take your hands above your head and break up the surface of the water as though oil or gasoline would be floating on water and on fire. So you would break that up with your hand so you could have a spot to come out and not get burned and catch your breath. And then if you had to go back under, at that point, it's your assessment.
I wonder if that would work.
I don't want to find
Breaking up
out.
the
Yeah, we're not going to really simulate it. I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Is there not another requirement? Someone had told me something about being able to swing from one place to another and support your own body weight or something like that when you're out there too. I can't remember what they were trying to describe to me.
You got to remember this was 0405.
Okay,
I'm sure
this is more recent. Yeah.
I'm sure safety has changed a great deal since
For
then.
the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, what was your rotation?
With Baker at the time, there was no rotation. So I would go offshore. My shortest job was 3 days. Went offshore. They sent a 30-foot jointed pipe with me.
Now, Baker does a lot of different things. So what were you actually doing?
So I was an MWD for them. So I was obviously on the directional side.
Mm-hmm.
What's that? What's MWD?
Measurement while drilling. So basically, our tools were essentially a 30-foot computer in a non-mag collar, essentially, and it measures magnetics of the Earth, and it measures the inclination of the hole that it's in. And it has what they call a scribe line, and there's a line that's literally etched on the outside of the tool, and directional drillers, MWDs, use that, and they know where that scribe line is in the hole at all times, essentially. So it's so basically it takes the surveys. It's very essential for kicking off of wells. Once we start drilling the horizontal, start drilling the curves, taking surveys, knowing where the wellbore is in the hole or where it is in relation to, where the surface location is.
Yeah,
Got it.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's all.
So
that's
how
all it
long
does.
you were out there for a year and a half?
So yeah, I worked with Baker for about a year and a half.
And was it that experience with the hurricane that made you decide to come back?
Oh yeah, I didn't go back offshore
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
So we came in, and of course I had some friends in Louisiana and Lafayette, and we were, hurricane parties. That's what everybody does. It's
Really?
oh yeah, that's a thing.
Like they just go to one person's house and hope that one doesn't blow away?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love this
Yeah,
idea.
hurricane parties. That was the thing, and
I've got quite a lot of friends in Louisiana, so I want to get invited to the next hurricane party because that sounds like a good time.
Oh, it was amazing. So traffic was just excruciating in Lafayette from all the Baton Rouge and New Orleans people, evacuating, because obviously that's where it hit the hardest. And it hit on a Tuesday morning, I think. And by Wednesday afternoon, we started seeing videos of New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and we're going. And I'm going, this was dumb.
Bad.
This was dumb.
Yeah.
Why did we stay here for this? Like, this could have hit Lafayette just as easily. I didn't go back offshore.
It's a different mentality down there, though. I lived in South Carolina for a while, and it is so common that, if they really evacuated for every time that there was a potential, they literally wouldn't be in their house during that season. They just kind of get used to it, right? It's different. It's a different mentality.
Well, and the reason New Orleans, it wasn't the magnitude of the hurricane that really hurt New Orleans, it was that the levee broke.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So that was the other part of the devastation that was not really, a Category 3 hits the shore. And usually in the first 50 to 100 miles, don't quote me on that. Obviously, somebody will have that data, but it gets decategorized to like a 3 and a 2 as far as, as it comes inland, and it drops very quickly. Even over the continental shelf, it drops very quickly because even though it's in, 70, 60, 50 feet of water, it's losing its momentum at that
Did
point.
you find any stigma for coming back on shore? Because the guys that are on shore, think differently about the guys that are offshore and vice versa.
No, not
They do.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. I've never heard that. I didn't find it shocking at all. I guess so. Whenever I left,
guys that are offshore will be like, I can't say that word, and I'm gonna get canceled off my own show. But they think that the guys that are onshore aren't as tough, or I don't know how else to put it.
I see.
They're not as hardcore, right?
Yeah, it's because they can't pass the helicopter training.
Kevin did both.
Maybe.
He does onshore and he still passed the helicopter
Calm
training.
down because like an MWD hand is essentially like one step below a mud logger.
okay.
The MWD hand is the lowest on the totem pole in the
As far as
oil field
toughness
world.
goes?
Well, just
No.
oil field world. Just
Yeah.
the location. The location hierarchy. How about
Correct,
that?
yes.
The MWD, he is like the scum of the earth.
Yes.
But you loved
It's
it.
like back. Well, I'm not.
I didn't mind it. I mean, like they also called us movie watching dudes
Right, because all you do is stare at a screen.
we just stare at screens and have movies playing in the background,
Yeah.
right? Like that was our job.
I'd lose my mind.
So
Me too.
But that's cool that you loved it.
I didn't mind it. It was, offshore. Here's what I run into a lot. A lot of people will ask for stories about working offshore. And a lot of people that I find that have worked offshore, they'll say, I'll never go back offshore. I did not have a bad experience offshore. Would I work offshore again? I don't know. Probably so. I think I would.
I've talked to a lot of guys, and you are right. It's either one or the other. They did it, and they never want to go back, or there are ones that did do it and have been on shore for a while and actually almost kind of look forward to going back. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's strange.
yeah.
It's just, I guess,
Yeah.
every person's different.
Positive or negative, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so when I left Baker, I came back to the Northeast. I came back to Pittsburgh, started working for a shallow conventional operator because there was no Marcellus at the time, or at least it wasn't. Hadn't
About
really,
what year did you come back? Do you remember?
It would have been September of 2005.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay.
And I went into the reserves department.
Okay.
That was terrible. so I was with a company while they went public, and then I've kind of jumped around just here in the Northeast. I lived up in Indiana, PA for a little bit for the same company, back to Pittsburgh, worked down in Bridgeport, West Virginia, just kind of hopping around for multiple different producers. But that was my jump from the service side over to the producer side.
Yeah. Majorly different.
I came to the dark side. I think that's what
Yeah.
you guys
Is that the
refer to,
dark
right?
side?
Yeah. Isn't that the dark side? Like the producer side? So.
I don't know. I always got told that, between downstream and upstream, I always get told the upstream period itself
okay.
is the dark side, right?
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
because I was
It's the
pipeline
more
for 3
fun.
years and now I've come back to upstream, I've returned to the dark side,
I see.
apparently.
I see.
Yeah, upstream is way more interesting. I think. I don't know. I've never done midstream, but
I'm
I
glad
really
that I
like
did. I've
upstream.
done both. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I've had that full breadth of experience, and they are very different from each other. But I find absolute value in kind of having had those experiences in both, because it gives you the full, do you know what I mean, spectrum of what it is that we're actually doing to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
But I do prefer upstream. So I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't say that.
You said that you had an affinity. Was it for?
For the directional drilling,
Yeah.
yeah, just it's I don't know, I love it. I think it's absolutely amazing what we do, drilling
And
horizontally,
explain what that
directionally.
is, because we have a lot of listeners that aren't necessarily oil and gas.
Sure. Can I break off into a side topic real quick?
Absolutely.
So I was going back and I was rewatching some of the podcasts, and actually I rewatched the one with John McEvers.
Yes.
And how you guys mentioned like maybe you guys ought to start up like kind of a technical series,
Yes.
just kind of explaining in lay terms. I'm very interested in that. So,
You
we'd
want to come
love
back
help
and
with
explain
that.
Ooh,
directional drilling?
I didn't go that far, but
Why?
But- kind
Who
of
better
did.
to do it than somebody with like a deep love?
if I have some time on my hands in the near future, I might be interested in helping you guys out with that.
Okay, so simplistically.
So very simplistically, so directional drilling, we have what's called a mud motor. It's about a 30-foot joint. It has a stator and a rotor on the inside of it. And basically it's a 30-foot joint, and at the very end, the last 2 feet or so, it'll have a small bend in it. And the drill bit goes on the end of that. And without rotating the drill pipe, you can pump through that, and the pump pressure and the fluid driving through that mud motor will actually turn that bit. And that bend is usually anywhere from 1 degree to 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees, up to 3.5 sometimes, depending on what you need. And it will turn the bit at the RPMs based on the pressure and the flow of the fluid, the drilling mud, through that joint of pipe. And that's how we build angle. That's how we slide the pipe. We don't rotate the pipe. We just slide it down the hole. And every foot, it drills off another degree, another degree, another degree.
It's really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And that's where that scribe line comes back into play for the MWD. They know where that scribe line is on the outside of the tool. And then they measure, whenever they mate those tools up, the MWD to the mud motor, they know where that scribe line is in the hole. And then they know how to align the scribe line, or the scribe on the outside of the tool, with the mud motor to know which direction, if they're drilling east, west, north, south.
Is that a new
that's how they know.
technology?
I'm sorry?
Is that a new technology?
Directional drilling kind of came about, I don't know the actual history, so I apologize, but I'm going to say early 90s. So
Yeah. 'Cause it
Have
was
you
like-
seen any major developments in it that you can kind of?
directional drilling in general?
Yeah.
Nowadays, the rotary steerable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So rotary steerable is actually being able to steer the bit while rotating. There's multiple different systems, but typically they'll have hydraulic pistons with a sleeve that rotates on the outside of that tool, and the hydraulic pistons will push against the sidewall of the hole, and it'll push that bit one way or the other.
They're
Yeah,
like
it's
little
pretty
pads,
amazing.
right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the
So
side.
it's pretty incredible. I mean, and like I said yesterday, just a real childlike affinity for it. I mean, we're drilling down.
That's what's so amazing. It's the depths we're going, and I don't know. It's just, and
It's
how
crazy.
precise it is, right?
It is. I mean, you drill down 5, 6, 7, 12, 13,000 feet, and then kick off horizontal and drill another 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 25. I mean, we're reaching out 30,000
Yeah, it's
feet as an
crazy.
industry, and it's just nuts. 30,000 feet, 6 miles. Drilling 6 miles sideways with an 8 3/4 inch bit.
It's crazy,
And we
right?
know where we are.
Yeah.
That's just insane. And that tool talks back to the surface, and we decode all those, either the electric pulses or the pulses, pressure pulses in the mud system. It's just insane what we're actually doing. If you explain this to somebody, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, back home, they'll ask me about the directional drilling. They're like, "How do you get the pipe to bend?" And I say, well, imagine picking up even let's say a 12, 14 foot 2x4. If you pick up on each end, that wood bows in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Now imagine a 16 pound per foot pipe, and I pick up one end, you pick up one end. That's not going to happen. But let's say we pick it up. I mean, there's bend in that pipe, and
Yeah.
it's just insane to drill that. And it's just kind of crazy, and to know where we are, where we're steering to, where we're headed. It's just
It is amazing.
It's amazing, and a lot of naysayers would say, "Well, you don't really know where you are," but we do. We're surveying. It's gone off the magnetics of the earth. It's gone off the calculation of how much drill pipe we put in the ground, and there's proof of this because we talked about the Deepwater Horizon. This is how they solved that. Whenever they lost control of that well, they moved another rig in, started drilling, and they intersected the well that they had lost control of with the other well.
That's just
So how could you do that if you didn't know where you were?
Correct.
exactly.
Yeah, and
that's
you're
just
uniquely
insane.
qualified to say that with your
I guess if you want to call me qualified. But it's crazy to think of that. I mean, that they intersected another well bore on purpose to kill that well to keep it from flying.
It's like flying 2 rockets to the moon.
Yeah, kind of.
You
I
know?
mean, it's like
and intersecting them in space.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and
that's
hitting
the
one.
difference, right? Like,
But
yeah.
you can see that. You can
Correct.
see under.
Yeah.
Yeah,
underground.
I mean, and you can look this stuff up. I mean, it's on the internet. It's, I mean, there's explanations on YouTube how they solved the Deepwater Horizon incident, and it's just crazy to me.
I do think we need to revisit that, like, layman's kind of series, even if it's just one a month or whatever, to kind of really allow individuals that aren't and ourselves, right, learn a little bit more about all of the stuff that's truly going on out there,
I would
right?
geek out.
Yes, Sarah absolutely would. She 100% would.
too.
Oh, I absolutely would. I love it.
Oh, I do too. The science behind it is just absolutely incredible. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
It is. So, what are some of the challenges that kind of arise with what we've been discussing? Because you're saying, we know what we're doing down there, and
Sure.
So what kind of problems can we encounter?
So a lot of the tools that we're trying to communicate with downhole, right? They're essentially computers, and the data that they're reading. So obviously you've got electronics in those things. Temperature is a big deal. In the Marcellus and the Utica, we're only seeing
Underground temperatures?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
At the depths of our formations, we're looking at, and I haven't seen some of the deep Utica stuff. It's got to be hotter because
Sure.
nature of the beast.
Pressure, yeah.
But it's some of these are starting to push. I mean, I was on a job in Mississippi where we were like 14,000 foot deep, and we were at 300 degrees. And whenever you start reaching 300, 320, I've been a little bit out of tune with the directional world, so I apologize, but you have to start reaching into high temperature equipment, right?
Right.
Because you can start melting
sensor.
wires and sensors
Yeah.
and all
Sure.
that stuff. But so that's always, temperature is always problematic. Communication with the tool, back and forth, trying to downlink to the tool and the tool understanding.
So when you're at those depths and you start having those types of problems, how do you remedy that?
You trip it out and you put a new one back
Right.
in.
I just wanted you to say it,
Yep.
right? So people realize that that's what you're having to do.
Yeah, so once the tool's broke, that's it. You start
Yeah.
pulling pipe, and you pick up a new one, and then go back. And sometimes,
And then you get Kevin calling you if you're the company man saying, "What the heck did you do?"
Yep. Who's at fault? I want to know whose fault is this. But yeah, there's all kind of things that go wrong. I mean, that scribe line. You have to know the degree between that scribe line on the MWD and that point, that bend of the motor.
Yeah.
And if it's not measured right, and it goes in, directional driller will be sliding because he's getting one tool face, but actually what's going on down there is, the bit's pointed a different direction. And then the surveys start not looking right.
Yeah.
And you go, well,
absolutely.
did the guy put it in right? Did he measure it right?
Oh
Did
my
he?
gosh, you would think that there's like ways to prevent that human error. Because that can screw up your whole job. That's
Well-
like a multi-million-dollar error for one human
Absolutely.
mistake.
Huge. I mean, you should be able to detect it fairly quick, right? Like the directional, because that's the other thing is the directional driller doesn't know, are you drilling the wrong direction? Is he just not getting the same bends out of this motor? Is he, and there's different motors, there's different bends you can run in the hole. There's fixed bends, adjustable bends,
Is there any surprises geologically that cause issues when you're doing these types of processes?
There are. I mean, it always depends on how the beds land down. You could come to a slight rise and then a fall in the actual formation.
And can you predict that?
It all depends. Now you start getting into seismic.
Yep.
Yeah, and seismic will predict that if and all that's kind of qualitative. It's
Sure.
You might be able to find it, you might not be able to find it. It's a tough play.
I'm just trying to see it from somebody who isn't in the industry's perspective, and I truly think that they think that we just take this random piece of equipment and shove it in the ground, right? Exactly.
Right.
And they must be sitting there thinking, like, how does that thing, get where it's supposed to go and deal with what it's encountering under the ground, and trying to think of it
Take
from
a hammer.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. I love what we do. I think it's absolutely amazing.
It is.
I mean, even on the fracturing side, the perforations.
Have you always been on drilling?
No, that's primarily my background.
Sure.
So when I came up to work for the operator that I worked for, leaving Baker, I was in the reserve side until that company went public. Then I transferred into the drilling. I say drilling, but it was actually drilling and fracturing, but we were drilling.
Because a lot of those smaller operators, it is a combination effort. You have one engineer that's kind of dealing with everything. Yeah.
And that's kind of what.
And that's kind of a blessing, I would think, if it were me,
Right.
to have had somewhat of experience on both sides.
Yeah, it is, because, and it's also, the thing you don't really fight is some of these bigger companies get very siloed.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have good crossover or handover with these, and with.
Listen, I've been in meetings in offices before and had texts because I'm sitting on the wrong side of the table. The drilling guys on the other side were like, "Why are you sitting on that side of the table?" And I'd be like, "I'm sorry, I just took a seat. But if you really need me to move over there, I will."
Right.
Like, are you kidding me?
So you don't have that handover, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have that problem. Like I understand exactly what's being with smaller companies. You know what the next step is, and you go.
Well, you were there for the initial process of drilling.
Right. Let's not haul that tank out. I'll just
Correct.
use it on the frac side. Or
Yes.
let's not do that, because that'll impact how my frac's going to go, or and it's with smaller companies like that, and not being siloed, it helps. You can work a little bit more efficiently. But on the flip side, you're not going to get as many wells done.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you just don't have that, and it's kind of hard to get, that technology drive on just the drilling side, right? Like
Sure.
I can't get the prices because I'm not drilling as many wells, and so it's a challenge still.
So the operator that you worked for when you first came back on shore, were they larger by the time you left them? My reason for asking is because you most recently worked for a much smaller operator, and I'm going to ask you, which one did you prefer? Which one do you prefer, that smaller or that larger operator experience?
Yeah, so they were small. They were a small operator. They went public. Like I said, they went public.
Yeah.
They bought some assets in Texas. Kind of moved headquarters to Houston. I left them for a little bit bigger company. It was a good transition for me at the time, obviously, because I could get a little bit more education. I was with the bigger company whenever we started developing the Marcellus, and I got to be on the front end of that, as to where I don't know that other company would have ever, drilled in that world. So, I think it was a good thing.
Sure.
That
Just
I
like
went.
me having my experience on midstream, right? I'm
Yeah.
very grateful for it. I've
Absolutely.
made wonderful friends, but I'm just glad to know the full process.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And like I said, you grow as a person, and you
Yeah.
learn more, and it was a good transition for me to go with the bigger company. I went to work for them, and they had moved me to Denver not soon after that, and I moved back. I quit and moved back to the Northeast, and they were a really good company. They ended up inviting me back not too soon after that, maybe a couple years after that, and I went back to them to start up a horizontal program for them, and learned a lot in the meantime. What all we had going on in the Northeast. And when I came back to them, I told them, "Look, guys, I'm interested in coming back, but I'm tired of job hopping. I'm tired of leaving a company,
Sure.
a company downsizing and me getting let go." Or
That is the nature of our industry, though, right?
I know. Well,
Just saying.
But I was willing to trade that to go back to work for a mid-cap size company, and they said, "That's great. That's what we're looking for. We want you to be invested in us too. That's great." And I said, "Okay, great." So I went back to work for them. About 3 years later, they sold an asset that I was working with, and then but they kept me on. They moved me to Ohio, and about 3 to 4 years after that, they sold that asset. And I said, come on, guys. And, but that's how we started it.
It is. And I actually told Kevin, did you hear that EQT completed on Tug Hill today?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, there you go. Another acquisition done.
Yep.
Congratulations, EQT.
Right.
Very good. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you've had a pretty impressive career trajectory. You know what I'm saying?
That
career.
word.
You've had trajectory. But and all these people wanted to keep you. You know, you went someplace
Or
and
have
they
you
wanted
back.
to keep you.
Yeah.
Or have you back. But what are you told me you have three secrets to success. What are they?
I don't know if they're secrets, but
They've worked for you.
they have,
right?
They have, yeah. I think, and I love talking about communication. I think communication's key with no matter what. I think if you apply communication to wherever you are in life, I think it will help. I think, I was 25, 26, very, I wouldn't say crude, but I was very upfront with people. I did not mix colorful words with things. I put it out there exactly how I felt. If I wasn't getting the performance I wanted, companies knew that. My boss knew that. You know, I felt like going to my boss, my job was to ask for everything that I needed to make a better well, and it was his job to tell me no. And I've said that to bosses. And I thought, I'm 27, 28. I'm a great communicator. I'm very clear, very concise. I know exactly. And it really didn't hit me until I was about 33, 34 that that's not really what great communicators do. I started learning that people communicate in different ways, and great communicators change their form of communication to meet who they're speaking to, right? That's the great communicator. It's not, I'm being very clear and upfront with you. Look, I'm writing this down. I'm showing you exactly what I want you to do. That's not that other person.
I struggle with that personally. I'll be honest with you, and I'm kind of known for it.
But you do it. But you do it and you don't even know it.
Correct. And I do try and dial it back. And
you
are very direct.
I am very direct.
Yeah.
And direct. And I thought that was great. I think direct. I used to think direct is
but
fantastic.
It's not always the way to go.
It's not.
Because you get people closed down sometimes.
Well,
you need to recognize who your audience is and who you're trying to communicate with. And I do realize that.
I don't think direct is a form of communication technically, though.
Yeah.
I think some people are better learners by seeing it on paper. Some people are better learners by seeing a picture. I love to draw pictures. My staff will make fun of me for it. But and then there's other times that I've said this a gazillion times to my staff. I know you know this, but I'm going to feel better if I say this out loud. Right? I'm going to say this to you. You're probably already thinking about it. You're an engineer just like me, or you're a manager just like I am, but I'm going to say it out loud to make sure that you don't hit the roadblock that I'm expecting, right?
Sure.
And I think it's fine to be direct, but you have to be that person to change your communication style to get that data across, right? Like,
I agree.
And you already do it. I bet you don't speak to your children the same way you speak to somebody in the industry.
I don't know. My daughter's here right now. Naila, do I speak to you like I speak to people in the industry?
but you don't speak to your parents the same way you speak to.
Yes.
It's just so we already do this. It's just that we're at work. You're just at work.
Yeah.
No. I'm in my engineer's office. I'm at my landman's office. I'm in my
all different personality types.
Absolutely.
All different communicators.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these things, it's easy to change. If you're aware of it, change it. Do it. And I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just make your job easier. Be aware of it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think communication's key. I think I think that's what the master communicator can do is they can communicate in different ways.
Languages.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotional languages.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's the main one. Care. I think a lot of and I don't mean millennials, but I want to say the generation, the people coming up. I think I've always had this with being in a smaller company. I always felt like every dollar I spent was my dollar. Am I getting the best bang for my buck? And you need to care about what you're doing. And I think that's just anywhere you go, whatever you're doing,
I
just
agree.
care about it. Like, don't, just because you handed that project off, and we talked a little bit about this, you handed it to another team member, another project, you know.
It's not like, well, that's it, I'm done.
No,
Yeah,
you're not
these
walking away
projects
from
become
it.
your kids.
That's
You know,
right.
if you do care about it. But
That's
I
right.
feel like some people just innately have that desire. Like Jen and I, we're workaholics, right? And so are you. So what do you do with some? It's hard for me to understand when somebody isn't. Like, do you just want to sit around all
Because
day? Like,
there
are you depressed?
Good employees who have a different mindset as far as they're really good at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
but when they have passed it off, it is gone from their mind.
Right.
How do you cope with that?
You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still.
Doesn't mean they're bad at their job necessarily.
No, not
you
at
know?
all. Not at all. They might be the best
Engineer, best landman, best whatever.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But and if you're that person and you do care, and you hand it off to somebody that's maybe not meeting your standards or not meeting your expectations, even as a team member, how can you make it easier for them?
Yeah.
Because guess what? As managers, I'll see that. I'll know that. I
Sure.
know when you're stepping up and helping whoever on the team that's struggling, and you don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Absolutely.
You don't know what they're doing, what they're going through. So don't. You know, I've been in the big company offices where they go, well, you know, did you hear what happened on that well over on completions there 2 weeks ago? Yeah, that sucks. No, it doesn't. I'm sharing in this company's wealth. Right? I'm here to be long term. You know,
For everyone to succeed.
absolutely.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
I'm, you know, I certainly, if they knew how to fix it, and I'm messing something up, come tell me.
Correct, yeah.
I've had spud meetings, in charge of the rig.
What's a spud meeting?
So a spud meeting for everybody is to bring all the service companies that you plan on using during the drilling of a well. You have a big meeting and you bring all the service companies in and go through different aspects of what
That's
the
where
plan
Jen gets to
is.
ask her stupid questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never been to one. I've never done drilling.
I've done
always
lots
wanted
and lots
to.
of spud meetings.
Yeah.
Completions have started having them.
Yeah.
They don't call them spud meetings.
Yeah,
They're just
right.
kickoff meetings maybe.
JSAs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So site visits but yeah. So I've sat guys down and said, I've said this in spud meetings. You know, we're gonna. At one time, it was a big push to drill 7 7/8 hole rather than 8 3/4 or 8 1/2 to downgrade the amount of cuttings we get. So we weren't losing as much oil-based mud, and we didn't have as much to solidify, and that was a big push at one time in the industry. But the pushback from the industry was, we still got to get tool joints in the hole on the casing where the drill pipe screws together. That's going to introduce a lot more torque because it's a smaller hole.
So it's finding that perfect size combination that you get
Yeah.
the least amount of cuttings, but you're going to have the least amount of failure, right?
Well, you hope.
Yeah.
Anyways, so brought everybody in, and I had a couple guys kind of snickering in the back, and I'm like, look, like, what's going on? They're like, well, so-and-so tried this over in whatever county. They couldn't do it. Like, we don't think you're going to be able to. And I'm like, that's what we're going to do. So either get on board or I'll find somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's, don't just sit and snicker. Like, this is
You're almost setting yourself up for failure because if
Yeah.
you're going into it with a failed mindset, then you're probably going to fail on your project.
Right.
I mean, that's what you find,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And we're going to make this work, or and don't get me wrong, I have had plenty of failures during my career, plenty more than I even care to admit.
that's how we learn.
But absolutely. I mean, learn from it, move on, move forward. So, yeah.
And do you have a third?
My third is being prepared when the luck hits. Right?
Oh, we changed it.
We had to change it a little bit, right? We
Yeah.
talked about being lucky, and I think, and your quote, if you want to give it the quote.
Yeah, Donald Trump said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get."
So I think there's a lot of truth in that, but it's being ready. It's because it's going to happen. The luck will happen. You're going to be in the right time, at the right place, whatever. It's going to happen, but you've got to be ready for it.
Well, look at Toby's story. Remember his personal story where he told us that he had failure after failure after
Yeah,
failure.
a
He was
raccoon
literally on
almost
his
killed him.
last dime, and he was lucky.
Yeah.
His last well that he had a chance with, he was lucky and he was ready
Yeah.
when
He
it
had me
happened.
read
And that
this-
made all of the difference, right?
He had me read this book. I think it's called The Great American Gamblers. And it was just that story over and over and over again about people who failed and then succeeded, but almost gave up. But it's,
So when that luck
it's the
hits, you need to be ready.
Common theme of our industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a common statement to say, it's on my last chance. It's kind of like saying, my keys were the last place I looked. Yeah, because you stopped looking. Because you found them, right? Like, so.
My grandma says that. You're setting.
Yeah, so but you have to be ready. You have to be ready. And and I was lucky enough, and the guys that came in and helped purchase the PDC Energy asset that we purchased as URO, I was very fortunate. They asked me to come in with them, and here we are.
And the funny thing is your first two actually feed into your third. So having that good communication, right? And working with others on your team successfully kind of lead to things being lucky, if you think about it, right? They kind of feed into that third. So, yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Preparation.
And you love your job.
I do.
I bet you people
do.
can feel that.
I just love the industry in general.
Me
I
too.
I love it.
Do.
I just
love it.
Providing energy for the states. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think it touches everyone's life. Yeah. Everyone's medication, plastics. I mean, it's just
fertilizer, food,
every aspect of and energy. Well, I think we talked about this. Cheap energy is the difference between third world country and first world country. It is the difference.
Yeah.
And
that and regular reliable supply.
Yeah, reliable.
Right.
Yeah,
so you can have it under your ground, but if you can't access it successfully, quickly, cheaply, and safely, then it doesn't serve any purpose to you.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just love the industry. I really do. I think it's great. I think it's incredible. The directional drilling really, I mean, it's amazing how much technology we steal. Like the directional drilling came from NASA. I mean, that's when they were trying to steer the moon.
We were just talking
rovers.
about it, steering.
I was like, NASA steered the moon?
The moon rover. So.
Well, we're kind of coming close to our end of our time, but because you're a native to Ohio, right, and your family is from there, you've seen firsthand the kind of changes that this industry has brought to the kind of tri-state area, right? Impacting families and communities and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any kind of thoughts on how Ohio has changed because of this industry?
I think Ohio has been pro-industry for a long time, which has really helped. But yeah, the change in at least the landscape where I grew up is tremendous. Yeah. It is huge. The positive impact, the amount of money that just oil and gas has brought into the area.
And jobs and futures, right?
I mean, and I say money, but I just mean all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of restaurants and, the indirect touches, the hotels that have been built because of us, and it's just incredible. It's just, it's, I mean, in our area, in Monroe County, I mean, there were farmers and just there were farms that had been in generations of family for years and was on the verge of bankruptcy, and then they lease for $5,000, $6,000 an acre. It's just crazy.
It's life changing.
Absolutely, it's generational wealth.
Yes,
it's generational wealth. It's not just you lease it and somebody can go buy a house or they can build a new barn. That happens. But this is generational. Or
Harleys, or like some of the other things that I've seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Random items.
Yeah, but just try getting a Morton building right now in the area, like built. It's not going to happen. But yeah, the amount of change in the area has just been phenomenal.
I love to hear that from like our native people in this industry, right? To hear it firsthand from them who have been here for generations, that have personally experienced not just working in the industry, but the impact that it's had on your family and your community. I think that's a really important message,
Yeah. Well, I I don't know if I should mention this or not. The first swing pad that ever was built. That's right on my family farm where I grew up, and
so it's impacted you personally, and that's not even from your job. That's
absolutely.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that. Well, we are unfortunately coming to the end of our time. It went quick, didn't it? Quicker than you thought? Yeah, absolutely. We can't thank you enough for coming on, Kevin. Again, we can't thank everybody for kind of tuning in. And this has been Energy First with
Sarah Phillips
and Jennifer McIntyre. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Bye.